Watch right now on the Front News Project 1,000 Shaheds over Ukraine in one night. Could this really become reality soon? Putin's helicopter was almost shot down in the skies over Kursk. Is it true, or just another delusion from Russian propaganda? And also Russia's offensive on Sumy and Kharkiv. The enemy is massing troops at the border. Fiery, intense, and blazing footage from the front lines. Watch it right now. The bloody war continues. A war that Vladimir Putin and his gang unleashed on Ukrainian soil. The heroic resistance of the Ukrainian armed forces and the entire Ukrainian people in their fight for freedom continues. Greetings, this is Front News. Vladimir Timoshenko is with you. For the next 30 minutes, you'll get the truth about the war, uncovered by our journalists from the hottest combat zones. So, are you ready? Then let's begin. And we're starting right away with exclusive material. A vehicle carrying officers from the Akhmat unit was blown up. This happened in the Kherson region. 4 Akhmat officers went to a concert for Kobzon. The Ukrainian armed forces know what they're doing. And recently, the maniac Putin organized a meeting with officials from the Kursk region, during which he supposedly joked that Sumy should become part of the Russian Federation. How real is this threat? We'll tell you more soon. There is also information that Russia has begun attacking Ukraine with kamikaze drones that autonomously and independently select their targets for destruction. All the details are in our next report.
Masterful work. A Ukrainian pilot with the call sign Yellowtail destroyed a Russian Shahed drone at the controls of a MiG-29 fighter jet during a night combat sortie. The Ukrainian armed forces are putting up a worthy resistance against the Russian invaders. On the Kharkiv front, a night battle took place in which Ukrainian defenders destroyed trucks and camouflaged enemy equipment. Specifically, a tank, an armored fighting vehicle, 3 trucks, and a van belonging to the enemy were hit. Meanwhile, guests have once again arrived in Russia. Over the course of 2 days, the aggressor country was attacked by 400 drones. Residents complained about explosions and the lack of internet.
A drone just flew over us.
In Moscow, they even temporarily closed the airports for safety reasons and announced the so-called carpet plan during the drone hunt.
Russian social media channels are notably and increasingly noting the lack of effectiveness of Russia's air defense system. We're specifically talking about strikes on legitimate military targets within the territory of the occupying country, which Russian air defenses were ultimately unable to prevent. In addition, there are reportedly reports of strikes on defense industry enterprises of the occupying country, specifically in the Tula region, as well as the Voronezh regions.
And instead of strengthening air defenses, the Russian dictator is likely making plans to capture the city of Sumy. This conclusion was drawn by analysts from the Institute for the Study of War following Putin's visit to the Kursk region.
This is what's called a controlled information leak. In other words, the heads of the Federation's regions are presenting the Russian dictator with possible future scenarios, namely the capture of a Ukrainian regional center or the creation of a so-called sanitary zone in the territory of Sumy region. At the moment, currently, there are no administrative districts or territories in the Sumy region that are controlled by Russian occupiers.
And now the Russians have started spreading information that their army has reached the border of Dnipropetrovsk region. But this turned out to be fake.
The appearance of this information can be classified as active operations in the information space aimed at shaping public opinion. In other words, information is being spread about a breakthrough directly at the administrative border of Dnipropetrovsk region, once again with the aim of exerting informational, military, and political pressure on the leadership of Ukraine.
And most importantly, the Russian army once again demonstrates its inhumanity. The occupiers are receiving direct orders to kill Ukrainian prisoners. This is evidenced by intercepted audio recordings and videos. CNN has published yet another piece of evidence of Russia's crimes.
So take them. The rest, deal with them.
In this video, there are 6 soldiers lying face down. At least 2 of them are shot at point-blank range and another is led away.
Since 2022, 75 criminal cases have been opened on suspicion of the execution of 268 Ukrainian prisoners of war. It should be noted that the number of extrajudicial executions is constantly increasing. If in 2022, the Russian occupiers, according to reports, executed by shooting a total of 57 unarmed Ukrainian prisoners of war, then accordingly, in just the first quarter of 2025, the number of extrajudicial executions is 51 Ukrainian servicemen.
Meanwhile, Russian kamikaze drones can now attack targets at distances of up to 100 kilometers using autonomous control without satellite navigation. These UAVs are capable of independently detecting, identifying, and attacking targets, which makes them less vulnerable to electronic warfare measures. And now an analysis of the operational situation on the long-suffering Pokrovsk direction of the front. The bloody rampage of the enemy armies continues here as well. In the Pokrovsk direction today, the enemy attacked the positions of our defenders 45 times in the areas of the settlements of Zarya, Alexandropol, Malinovka, Elizavetinka, Mirolubovka, Lisovka, Udakhnoye, Novonikolayevka, Kotlyarovka, Troitskoye, and Andreevka. 10 clashes are still ongoing. The settlement of Novotoretskoye also came under attack from Russian-guided bombs. And these have also been hellish days for the capital of Ukraine and the Kyiv region. A record-breaking attack by the Russians on Ukraine, a combined assault, almost 300 drones and 70 missiles. 13 regions came under attack at once. According to available data, 12 people were killed and 60 wounded. This is how Putin showed Trump how he is preparing for negotiations. More details in the report from our colleagues at the television news service.
Of course, I can't say for certain, but it seems to me that the Kiev region hasn't seen such destruction since March 2022. Remember when Vokzalnaya Street in the city of Bucha was liberated, as well as the entire Kiev region? We were horrified by those images, especially from Vokzalnaya Street in Bucha. Now it's Shevchenko Street in the village of Markalivka. Tatiana is holding her daughter Solomia in her arms, who is 1 year and 8 months old. During the strikes, she was sleeping with her on the second floor of their house. She says she didn't hear the alarm.
We were blown away by the fact that it was very Apple-like. I woke up because there was a really strong blast. I got up, sat down, covered my daughter with a blanket, shielded her with my own body, leaned over her and saw a huge red flash. Then, when it hit, I ran barefoot in my pajamas down the stairs to the first floor. In her pajamas, she climbed down the chairs to the first floor.
The house is in ruins, but the main thing is that everyone is alive. The woman says their house had already suffered from enemy shelling even during construction.
We thought that lightning doesn't actually strike the same place twice, but it did.
Tatiana's neighbor, Svetlana, is also a victim of Russian shelling for the second time. It was only in January that TSN showed the burned-out apartment in Hlevaka, which is also in the Kyiv region. There, Svetlana's eldest son miraculously survived after a drone hit their house, and just last night the woman, her younger son and her husband were already between life and death.
We heard a sharp whistling sound in the air there, and my son and I started to run. We were right here when a piece of debris flew in. We started running.
In the end, half a second saved you.
Half a second, then we kept running. My husband was behind us. We were running to the basement. To the basement, I went down first. My son was right behind me. There was a whistling sound, and then all the glass in the house shattered.
This and all the glass in your house shattered. What, your house?
It was.
Vladimir is searching through the ruins of his house trying to find anything that can still be saved. Fortunately, his children and wife only suffered minor injuries. While talking to us, the man finds his son's embroidered shirt and his daughter's graduation dress. The girl is about to finish school now.
We'll wash it, we'll make it look new again, sew it up. My son will wear the embroidered shirt and she will wear the dress. And then I'll find my own embroidered shirt and wear it too. And let them die.
Students from Shevchenko National University in the capital are helping to clean up the yard near one of the dormitories. Debris from a drone hit the building.
The gas pipe was severely damaged, which caused a fire, and as a result of the incident, the windows and doors in this part of the dormitory, where we are now, were blown out.
Emergency services responded quickly. They shut off the utilities. At the moment of the explosion, most of the students were in the shelter, so no one was physically injured. But everyone is in shock. Valeria lives in the neighboring dormitory.
Shocked because the last time I saw something like this, it was at my own home. At the moment, that is occupied territory. And all of this brings back the horrors of everything I saw before. Right now it's exam season, there's already a lot of stress, and all these additional worries make it very hard.
At night, and all these extra worries, it's a very difficult thought. All night, the police together with bomb disposal experts inspected the building and the surrounding area. Now the students have come out to clean up.
We are such a big student community, we need to support each other. We don't live in the dormitory ourselves, but our friends are here. We came from the left bank.
And again, the Kiev region, the city of Kharkiv. Here people still remember the Russian offensive in March 2022. More than 40 private houses were damaged by a rocket attack on Sunday night. Some of them were completely destroyed. One of them is Lyubov Bula's dacha.
There's nothing left here. Take a look.
Take a look at how deep this crater is. And I know for sure that this is a residential area. There is nothing military here. A little further down the street, there is another crater several meters deep. The house next to it is a complete ruin. Opposite is Valentina's house. Her face was cut by shards of glass. The woman lives alone. During the occupation of Kharkiv, the Russians killed her husband, her daughter-in-law, and her 11-year-old grandson. Now this house will have to be demolished and rebuilt, her daughter says.
I was standing on the balcony watching. Missiles were flying one after another, 4 of them. All 3 fell, and the 4th flew off in another direction. A roar, an explosion, and that was it.
The owners of damaged houses are immediately given wooden boards by the local authorities together with charitable organizations to cover up the broken windows. The destruction is being documented. Assistance for restoring destroyed homes will be provided a little later. Unfortunately, 12 lives were taken forever by the Russians in this attack.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
And now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the Kupiansk and Lyman fronts. The enemy is becoming more ferocious here as well. On the Kupiansk front, the aggressors tried 4 times to advance on the positions of Ukrainian units in the areas of Zarizove and towards Petropavlivka. One battle is still ongoing. On the Lyman front today, the aggressor attacked 10 times in the areas of the settlements of Kharkivka, Novomikhailivka, Rydkodub, Yampolivka, and Torske. Currently, 4 clashes are ongoing. Meanwhile, the Russians have begun concentrating troops near the border with Kharkiv region. Our forces are preparing for a possible enemy offensive. Western analysts believe that this very offensive will begin as early as June, because by then Russia will have a 4-month window to try to break through the Ukrainian defenses before the autumn rains turn the ground into mud. Details in the following report by TSN military correspondent Andriy Tsaplienko.
The Kremlin dictator used peace negotiations as a cover for his offensive. At the very moment when Putin's envoys were already sitting down at the negotiating table in Turkey, his armored vehicles were crawling south from the north toward Kharkiv.
I'm sure there will be more attempts. These are very important targets for them. Back in 2022, the Russians were 100% sure that Kharkiv would immediately come under their control.
The attack was an attempt to recapture the forest, which the occupiers called Berlin. The day before, the Kartia Brigade had completed an operation to liberate this area, but the Russians are not giving up. They need the forest as a staging ground for an offensive on Kharkiv.
Of course, they are planning further actions and at the very least want to do what they did in 2022, so that their artillery can directly affect the city of Kharkiv.
Kartia stopped this attack, but Russia has amassed 50,000 troops at the borders of Kharkiv region, according to Western analysts. They predict in June Putin will launch a major offensive. Kartia promises the Russians will achieve nothing here.
They will keep trying to capture the city of Kharkiv. As long as we are here, their chances are very, very slim.
Even though the war is changing rapidly, the role of infantrymen remains crucial, while some types of weaponry are literally losing their significance before our eyes because they become easy prey for drones. The intensity of aerial reconnaissance in the Kharkiv direction is such that survival here depends on 2 factors: speed and effective camouflage. In fact, our rocket troops learned how to camouflage themselves from the enemy. The Russians have long been disguising their grads under tarpaulins. They, like us, now very rarely use rocket artillery.
Here in the field, standing still for too long means death.
For such a large launcher, it's almost impossible to reach the firing position unnoticed. But when there's a need, the guys go anyway. Because sometimes only they can stop a massive advance of enemy vehicles.
We didn't know exactly where they were hiding. I mean, we knew they were firing from that tree line, but where exactly in this landing is unknown. So they call us in, and we hit the entire tree line at once, so we don't have to search.
Drones on fiber optics are cutting off the logistics of the Ukrainian army more and more each day. Our long-range artillery has become an effective means of counteraction. A separate artillery brigade of the National Guard supports the guys from the Freedom Force with these Slovak cannons, beautifully named Zuzana. Above the Ukrainian positions, there is a huge number of Russian drones. But even in conditions where the air is literally saturated with enemy drones, artillery does not lose its relevance, especially such long-range and highly accurate artillery. The only downside of Western weaponry is that there is never enough of it in a war as intense as ours. Like ours. The Zuzana 2 looks like a giant automatic rifle that can accurately fire 6 shells per minute.
One shell is fired, 11 seconds pass, and the second one is already on its way. And because of the firing range, while the first shell is still in the air, we can launch another 9 and already be on our way out.
Its accuracy and long range make it possible to hit command points for those same FPV drones connected by fiber optics, which the enemy uses to terrorize frontline roads with impunity.
Yes, there are very few such guns in the world. We find targets up to 30 kilometers from the line of contact. In other words, we're firing into the enemy's rear. We reached them, 27 kilometers, destroyed their ammunition, destroyed a gun, and mostly these were drone pilots. We used cluster munitions against the pilots.
The main danger for the artillerymen is Russian reconnaissance drones, which specifically search for the Zuzana, and when they find it, they don't hesitate to even send up a plane with a glide bomb. To keep our air defense from interfering with their aerial reconnaissance, the enemy sends their drones up several kilometers, at altitudes where the machine guns of mobile groups are powerless. So the anti-aircraft gunners found a mirrored countermeasure to the glide bomb and super glide bomb in a rather unexpected way. Supposedly, an FPV drone appeared out of nowhere and with a single strike cleared our skies of the enemy wing. The first to use interceptor drones were the Ukrainians. Later, the Russians learned about this technology, so right now we're not revealing any military secrets. However, the tactics for their use are constantly being improved. That's why the National Guard, while keeping certain tactical details secret, is always trying to stay one step ahead of the enemy. It was in this area that more than a year ago Ukrainians began attacking Russian drones with FPV drones.
Volodya, they say that a kamikaze drone is always a one-way trip, but yours, surprisingly, comes back. Yes, ours returns if we don't find it.
Yes, ours returns. If there's no target, it comes back. When a new target appears, we have a drone. The Tornado returns. If no target, it comes back, so we have a drone. 6 or 7 faculty. Like ammunition, if it doesn't detonate, it's connected after all.
Yes, it's still armed. That's my risk.
The technology has spread. Now it's a contest of speed, maneuverability, and endurance.
Everything has shifted into a higher speed mode. Now it's more like a war of attrition, that's how I'd put it. They fly high, fast, they don't stay in one place, they're constantly maneuvering.
This Russian drone sharply dodges when a Ukrainian drone approaches. It's equipped with a system that allows it to automatically make turns to avoid FPVs. In Russia, this system is called Ukilyant. It's installed on Zala drones.
All right, I got it. It's heading toward the LBZ. Unfortunately, we can't catch up to it.
The cooperation between units has turned this section of the front into an impassable zone for the occupiers. Enemy losses here are 10 times higher than those of the National Guard.
1 to 26. It's bad that we lose even one of our own, but 26 Russians die in return.
Is that in your battalion?
Yes, that's just our battalion, our defense sector. We are an infantry battalion. 400 Russians, that's over roughly 3 months.
Maximum results for minimal financial resources. These are exactly the kinds of technologies we need to look for to stop the next offensive, which Putin apparently will launch in the coming days. Innovative solutions and a constant race to stay ahead, this is the only way Ukraine can hold out under limited resources.
Opening fire.
Now let's analyze the situation on the Novopavlivka front in detail. The Russian world continues to destroy, kill, and maim here as well. On the Novopavlivka front, our defenders are repelling enemy attacks in the areas of the settlements of Konstantinopol, Bohatyr, Otradne, Zeleny Pol, Novoselka, Novopil, and Svobodne Pol. 10 out of 14 enemy offensive actions have been repelled, and one more battle is still ongoing. One more factory down. In the city of Yelets, Lipetsk region of Russia, drones attacked the Energia plant, part of the military-industrial complex of the aggressor country. According to preliminary information, it has ceased operations. There were also powerful explosions in the Kursk region. There are reports of a strike on Russian military equipment. In the past 3 days alone, more than 1,000 drones have paid a visit to the Russians. Meanwhile, the Russian army is trying to capture Kostiantynivka using the tactic of encircling the city from different directions. At least that's what American intelligence is reporting. Russia is also deploying new air-to-air missiles with nuclear warheads. Our journalists have the details.
Another one.
There's another pop in Russia. In the Lipetsk region, the Energia plant, which is of great importance to the Russian military-industrial complex, was attacked.
Turn off the lights. Turn off the lights.
There were approximately a dozen separate explosions that occurred in the area surrounding the facility, and as a result, a fire eventually broke out.
Yes, look at this. There have already been 10 of them that hit. Yeah, now it just started working. 10 of them have already flown by. Yeah, now it just started working.
According to some reports, after the attack, the plant ceased operations.
This plant is a developer and manufacturer of highly specialized autonomous power sources for aviation, river fleets, and naval fleets, but most importantly of all, for the systems of unmanned aerial vehicles of the Russian Federation. Therefore, strikes on this facility will significantly reduce Russia's ability to use aerodynamic weapons to strike Ukrainian territory at this time.
Powerful explosions also thundered in the Kursk region. There, strikes hit a concentration of military equipment and occupiers. In the past 3 days, 15 regions of Russia have come under attack. According to the Ministry of Defense, during this time about 750 fixed-wing drones were shot down by regular air defense systems.
Ukraine's defense forces are carrying out preemptive strikes on permanent and temporary deployment points of personnel and locations where armored vehicles are concentrated. In addition, strikes have been carried out on the rear logistics of the Russian army in the territory of the Kursk region. This concerns bridges and pontoon crossings, which allows Ukraine's defense forces to create threats of operational encirclement for Russian troops, concentrated in the Glushkovsky district of the Russian Federation.
At the same time, fierce fighting is taking place in various sectors of the front. The situation in the Konstantinovka direction has become extremely tense in recent weeks. The task of the Russian occupiers in the near future is to achieve a partial encirclement of the city and bring the logistics of Ukraine's defense forces under fire control. This was reported by the BBC, citing a source in the command staff of the Ukrainian armed forces.
The Russian occupiers are trying to intensify pressure in the Konstantinovka direction simultaneously along several sectors of the front. The Torets direction involves attempts to break through in the area of Delivka. The Pokrovsk direction refers to the fighting for the Pokrovsk-Konstantinovka highway. At the moment, the settlement of Malinivka is almost entirely under the control of the occupiers. This is the so-called Malinivka junction, which gives the occupiers the opportunity to create a threat of operational encirclement with access to Mirnohrad, the Pokrovsk direction, and accordingly to Konstantinovka. The battles for Konstantinovka will be key during the summer offensive of the Russian occupation forces in the Donetsk region.
And in addition, Russia is arming itself with new air-to-air missiles equipped with nuclear warheads. According to American intelligence, the Russian military command has decided to equip fighter jets with nuclear munitions, which indicates a return to Cold War-era practices.
This program was supposed to be implemented back in the days of the Soviet Union during the so-called Cold War. But upon realizing the futility and ineffectiveness of this program, it was essentially put on hold. Therefore, the possibility of reviving this program under the current conditions is viewed, let's say, quite skeptically, including by the American side. We're talking about warheads of up to 5 kilotons.
Meanwhile, Forbes editor-in-chief Steve Forbes gave Donald Trump advice on how to deal with Russia in order to reach a real agreement to end the war in Ukraine. Specifically, as Forbes noted, the U.S. has thousands of A-10 Warthog attack aircraft. Hundreds of these should be provided to Ukraine. Only then will Putin realize that he is starting to lose.
If at the moment the issue of transferring F-16s has not been resolved, not because they are unavailable, but because there is a lack of flight personnel, that is, trained pilots and technical staff specifically for the Ukrainian defense forces, then accordingly such initiatives from the Forbes editor-in-chief are met with a bit of irony. First and foremost, and most importantly, it's specifically a matter of properly and thoroughly training Ukrainian pilot crews.
So we
Now let's move to the Kharkiv direction of the front.
The enemy is becoming more ferocious here as well. In the Kharkiv direction, the defense forces successfully repelled 3 enemy attacks. The enemy tried to advance in the areas of the settlements of Mali, Shcherbaki, Stepne, and towards Novoandriivka. This war was not called the drone war for nothing in the very first year of the full-scale invasion. It is these very Russian drones that terrorize peaceful Ukrainians almost every day. And it is precisely UAVs that help Ukrainian defenders strike military targets on the territory of terrorist Russia. The following report from our colleagues at the television news service is about how members of the 65th Mechanized Brigade are improving their drone piloting skills.
In this workshop, dedicated and skilled drone pilots from the 65th Mechanized Brigade both carefully assemble UAVs and hone their piloting skills on a simulator.
You always need to practice? We practice. We go out in the evening to fly the drone, and also in the morning. Whenever we have free time, we still need to fly and train.
And on this table there are nuts, screwdrivers, and a soldering iron. A soldier with the call sign Chaplain modifies drones, attaching new parts so that the bird is perfectly obedient.
I'm checking if the camera rotation is working properly. Yes, the camera is working. And I'm checking the drop mechanism itself.
He has been in the army since the very beginning of the full-scale invasion and has been working with drones for a year now. He says he spends half an hour on the technical improvement of a single drone. This is extremely necessary because the enemy is well equipped with electronic warfare systems. To get around the enemy's traps, the defenders play with the frequencies.
We lock it down with software. So that even if the drone falls into enemy hands, they can't figure out which frequencies we're using. There were times when the enemy really tried to storm our guys' positions, and thanks to the drones, we were able to stop them.
The soldiers buy the necessary parts at their own expense. As for the drones themselves, they mostly receive them from volunteers. They also use captured drones. This one, for example, is a Russian boomerang. After repairs, it will return to the occupiers loaded with explosives.
They didn't call it boomerang for nothing. I mean, we understand that the boomerang always comes back. That's why we fixed it, and it's going to fly back to where it came from. Whatever they do will inevitably come back to them. So it's better not to do it at all. Just go back to your own land.
The pilots are scheduled so that each of them spends 4 days working in the workshop and then 4 days at the front positions. They destroy Russians, their shelters, ammunition depots, and armored vehicles.
That's what we hit. And now there will be a video showing how it keeps burning after the hit.
And now there will be a really good explosion. It was burning pretty well over there.
The soldiers also have their own charms. For the talisman, it's a warlike capybara made of clay crafted by his younger brother. And the chaplain never goes on a mission without this first aid kit.
I've had this first aid kit with me since the very first days. So it's already 3 years old, just like my time in the armed forces. And truly, from what I see, the reason God blesses me is because in all 3 years of combat, I haven't had to use this first aid kit even once.
The pilots are doing everything they can to prevent the occupiers from seizing even a scrap of Ukrainian land. That's all for today, but very soon Front News will bring you new, unique reports from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, gathered so that you know the truth. This was Volodymyr Timoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.